Hello Pokemon fans, I'm Professor K for the Pokemon Evolutionaries, welcoming you to the third installment of Deck Tech Thursday. Today we are going to be profiling a Trevenant BREAK deck. Last week you guys saw N's Darkrai Zoroark, and before that you saw my Greninja BREAK deck. So we're going to continue the theme of profiling BREAK decks here, at least for myself. We're going to continue on with a very successful deck, Trevenant BREAK. This deck revolves around item locking and placing damage counters around the board. So let's go ahead and jump right into this and show you guys what makes this deck work so well. So first off here, we have 4 Phantom. This Phantom is the one from Breakpoint, and it has the attack Ascension. Ascension, search your deck for a card that evolves from this Pokemon and put it onto this Pokemon. So if you're going second and you have an energy and a Phantom, you can still get turn 1 Trevenant and lock your opponent into item lock without even having to necessarily worry about hard evolving I should say, and you're locking them turn 1. Even if you go first, and you can do other ways to get into Trevenant, but we'll get into that in a moment. Turn 1 item lock is very possible with this deck. This helps it quite a bit. Next up here, we have 3 copies of Trevenant from X and Y. Trevenant has the ability Forest Curse. As long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, your opponent can't play any item cards from his or her hand. That can be devastating in a game where most decks are item based. You get item-based draw support, item-based Pokemon searching. It's really, really bad for your opponent to not be able to play items. So it's really strong. And this has always been a strong card, but it just hasn't had the necessary attack. Tree Slam's all right. 60 for 2 colorless and a Psychic and doing 20 to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. It's okay, but it gets better now that we have this card. 3 copies of Trevenant BREAK. Trevenant BREAK gives it an extra 50 HP, and you have the attack Silent Fear. Place 3 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon. That is really, really strong. You're placing 3 damage counters across the whole board every time you attack. And it's only a colorless and a Psychic, so you can actually put down a Dimension Valley and attack for a single Psychic energy for 30 everywhere. That's really powerful, like really powerful, and that's why this deck has done so well on type of item lock as well. 30 may not seem like a lot, but it adds up fast. We also have 1 copy of Wabafet by Barricade. As long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, each Pokemon in play, each player's hand, and each player's discard pile has no abilities except for Psychic Pokemon. So this card will actually block your opponent's abilities as well. So that is really strong because now they can't play down their Shamans. They don't have any ways to use their anything really that has an ability for that matter. And Psychic Assault actually punishes your opponent for having damage counters on them. 10 damage plus 10 more for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. So if you have something that's got a lot of damage on it, you can hit it with Psychic Assault and take a knockout as well. Just one way to go about it. So the final Pokemon we have here is 3 copies of Shaman EX for extra draw support with the setup ability. Obviously this is a very expensive card. Shamans are like 50 bucks right now, so we got $150 sitting right here. It's very expensive, but it makes the deck work. If you're a competitive player, you've got to have Shamans. It's just, there's no way around it. Shamans are really, really good in this deck. They're good in a lot of decks that are standard as well. This is a standard deck profile as well, by the way. Shaman is just too good. Setup ability, obviously if you have a Wabafet in the active, you're not going to want to put down a Shaman, so you just got to learn to play your deck the right way. Alright, so that's it for Pokemon. Next up here, we're going to get into the supporters. We've got 4 copies of Professor Sycamore. Discard your hand and draw 7 new cards. Very strong draw support, the only good draw support in the game right now for standard. We will be getting N back shortly, but for now, Sycamore is where it's at. Next up here, we've got 3 copies of Walle. Search your deck for a card that evolves from one of your Pokemon, excluding Pokemon EX, and put it onto that Pokemon. It counts as evolving, shuffle your deck afterward, and you can use this card on the first turn or on a Pokemon that was put into play this turn. So if it's your turn going first, and you can't attack, you can't use Ascension, you can play Walle and still get turn 1 Trevenant. Really strong. Anytime you need to do that, maybe you can't get Trevenant BREAK into play because it's in your deck, you can Walle, Trevenant into Trevenant BREAK as well. So it's really, really strong. It works really well in this deck. Next up here, we've got 2 copies of Judge. Judge will, each player shuffles his or her hand and draws 4 new cards. It's kind of an N replacement, but it doesn't do the job nearly as well, but it still is a draw support, and it's not so bad when you got Shaman EX as well. 1 copy of Lysander. This deck really places damage counters everywhere. Sometimes you just need to get that last knockout and maybe use Psychic Assault or something, or Tree Slam. You can Lysander up one of your opponent's bench Pokemon into the active and take care of it. We also play 1 copy of Xerosic. Choose a Pokemon tool or special energy card attached to a Pokemon in play, yours or your opponent's, and discard it. This is really good in the mirror match. It also is good for getting rid of bursting balloons or muscle bands, fighting fury belts, what have you. It is really good to do that. Not to mention DCEs are a thing. Double Dragon Energies, any kind of special energy whatsoever, you can Xerosic it off and help yourself out. In addition to that, we also have Team Flare Grunt, discarded energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So they've got something up there that maybe you don't want to see have any energy on it. You can just discard it. Really good supporter for that, especially stuff that has high HP that you want to sit there for a while and not be able to do anything while you use Silent Fear. It's really good for that. Nice little one of in this deck. And of course, one ofs don't hurt quite so much. Once we start getting into the item lineup, you can see 4 copies of VS Seeker. Get a supporter card from your discard pile and put it into your hand. Very straightforward, very simple. It adds numerous support to the deck just by using that. Next up here, we have 4 copies of Trainer's Mail as well to get any item cards or trainer cards that we may need. Say we need a Dimension Valley or an Ultra Ball or anything in this deck really. VS Seeker, what have you. Supporters, you can get them. If you look at the top 4 cards of your deck and one of them happens to be there, you just can't get yourself another Trainer's Mail is the only stipulation. Next up here, we've got 4 copies of Ultra Ball. Being able to discard 2 cards and getting a card is very helpful, especially with Shaman. You can bring down your hand size and get a Shaman, bench it, and draw up to 6. And it also is going to get out your Trevenant Breaks, maybe your Wabafets, your Trevenants if you can't Walle. Whatever the case may be, you have ways of getting Pokemon into play that way. It is a very low counting Pokemon deck, so Ultra Balls are very helpful. We also have 4 copies of Bursting Balloon, just like in the Greninja deck. Bursting Balloon is very, very powerful in this deck. You're forcing your opponent to attack you and deal 60 damage to themselves, or figure out a way to get around it, whether it be a Startling Megaphone, a Xerosic, or a Lysander. Bursting Balloon, if the Pokemon the card is attached to is your active Pokemon and is damaged by an opponent's attack, even if it's knocked out, place 6 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. Very strong. You're dealing 30 damage each turn. This gives you an extra 60. We also have 2 copies of Enhanced Hammer to get rid of those pesky DCEs. One of the things that beats this deck is a Shaman loop, where you just Sky Return over and over and over, because Shaman's not going to keep the damage on it if you're Sky Returning. You're going to lose that 30 damage every time, so you're going to want to get rid of their DCEs and make sure that you can take the game in that kind of a matchup. We also have 2 copies of Float Stone to get yourself out of the active position if you need to be. Trevenant has a pretty heavy retreat cost. Wabafet has 2, and this deck doesn't run a lot of energy, so you might want to put on a Float Stone in order to get yourself out of the active. We have 1 copy of Super Rod. Shuffle in any combination of 3 Pokemon and basic energy into your deck. So if you run out of Phantoms, Trevenants, whatever, you need to throw something away early, you can get it back with Super Rod. We also have 1 copy of Headringer. Another thing that beats that Shaman loop is going to be Headringer. If you put a Headringer on a Shaman, they can't attack with Sky Return for a DCE. You're forcing them to have to use 3 energy, which means 2 DCE, and they're not going to be able to keep that loop up, at least not for 1 turn. You're going to disrupt them that way. So there's that. We have 4 copies of 1 Stadium card that really, really helps this deck, and that is Dimension Valley. Each Psychic Pokemon's attacks, both yours and your opponent's, cost 1 colorless energy less. So Silent Fear becomes 1 Psychic energy, Trevenant becomes a Psychic and a colorless, but it's going to be 2 Psychic or Mystery energy, you'll see in a minute. And then Ascension you can actually do for free. That's pretty good. Finally, here we have our energy count, which is 5 basic psychic energies and 3 mystery energies. Mystery energy may only be attached to psychic Pokemon. It does provide psychic energy, but only while it's attached to a psychic Pokemon. And the retreat cost is 2 colorless energy less. So you can attach this to a Wabafet. Free retreat. You can attach it to a Trevenant, and you can retreat for 1 energy. Pretty good. So you don't need a whole lot of energy to make this deck work. Obviously, it's very low energy cost, and it's very fast too. Walle is a very good engine for that to make that happen. It's very strong. It's won multiple tournaments and done really, really well overall. So I think this deck is fantastic, and I think that it's going to be in standard and I think expanded as well for a little while anyways, until they find ways to block it, which there may be something coming up here soon that might do that very well, actually, depending on how they splash it into a deck. But it is really good. So anyways, guys, that's the deck, Trevenant Break. Let us know what you guys think. Feel free to do with it what you will. I feel like this is a really good build. It's pretty close to what the state champion here in Florida ran. Very close, as a matter of fact. I think it's almost the same exact list, but I'm not 100% certain on that, so don't quote me. But I did watch it from the stream, and I built it off of that. So anyways, guys, that's going to be it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Deck Tech Thursday, and we look forward to seeing you next Thursday for Ends Deck, whatever that happens to be. And of course, plenty of TCG content here on the way. We've got an Elite Trainer Box battle going up against the PokeCapital. He posted his video yesterday. We're going to be posting our video a little bit later on this afternoon, going into this evening, and we've got all kinds of brand new products for you guys, so stay tuned for that, and we look forward to seeing you there. So for the Pokemon Evolutionaries, I'm Professor K, and you all take care.